What is up, everyone? Today we're going to talk about how I set up my car rig to shoot solo car stuff. Now, this is going to be a general overview of how I set up my specific equipment, and if you want to see the other video that explains how to shoot solo car videos, I will put it up here for you guys. But let's just get into the video.
I'm in it for the glory. 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 Going up, yeah, we going up. Take it to the sky, going up. Yeah, we going up. Glory on the rise, going up. Yeah, we going up. Take it to the sky, going up. Yeah, we going up.
All right, so let's just first talk about what I use. First thing is the DJI RS2. Highly recommend this for this job. It even has a function called Super Smooth, which is used for times when you're on like a car. The next thing is the base expansion kit, which allows you to connect your gimbal to your mount of choice that goes on your car. So I recommend using it without the battery grip with the base expansion kit. It looks something like this. It's a lot smaller and more secure on your car. Next is this big boy here. This is the Rig Wheels cloud mount with the base expansion kit up top here. And then this piece of metal here is just a receiver for a winch. Normally this would have a lip that curves up to attach the winch in different ways, but I cut that off so it's a completely flat piece to mount this on. You could just literally buy a 2-inch hollow bar and drill some holes, but that seemed a lot more difficult and time consuming. There are plenty of different ways to connect things to your car. You could get a tilt-a-mount or some other brand, it doesn't really matter, but I specifically use this, and it's the DJI RS2 Pro Kit, which comes with things like the Raven Eye, which are essential for my setup. Lastly is a monitor recorder. I use the Ninja 5, it works very well, highly recommend it, but you don't need to, but it does help to have one that does recording. So let's get into the setup. Obviously this only works if you have a hitch on your car, but you're going to put the hitch mount in the hitch receiver and then use a locking hitch pin. Doesn't really matter if it locks or not. You're probably not going to leave this on the back of your car unattended, but I use a locking one just because. I also use a stiffener, let's call it. This will tighten up the joint between your arm and your hitch receiver, and what it does is it avoids this shaking motion here. So when you tighten this down, this will no longer be shaky. Now I already have my base expansion kit and receiver mounted onto my cloud mount. I had to drill some extra holes and I used some thread locker with some bolts going through my cloud mount. So this is permanently on here unless I absolutely need to take it off. And then we are going to put our Ronin on the setup. In the base expansion kit we have this piece right here, and this will basically lock our Ronin to the base so that in case it does come loose, this will keep it on there and avoid extra wiggle. Next thing we're going to do is take our Raven Eye and we're going to install it on the bottom here. This is where things get a little weird. So the Raven Eye, it doesn't necessarily have anything to lock it in place. It does fit snugly on here, snugly, and I wasn't really happy with that, especially when you're going over large bumps when you're driving. So what I did is I took a piece of electrical tape and I taped it around the back side here off the side of the actual mount so that it would not fall off. Then you're going to want to take your camera all set up. Make sure you use a lens support or else your camera will have extra bounce, and that is something we want to avoid. Make sure you have all your accessories, batteries, SD cards, what have you in your camera when you set it up, because you need to have the balance be perfect. Normally I would balance my camera out before I come out here and set everything up so I know that it's perfectly balanced, and that makes it easier because balancing it on something like this is not necessarily ideal, but it is what it is. So do what you must, but make sure that this is balanced well and that it looks good. Lastly, we're going to install our little connector. This is so we can connect our handle grip so we can have control over our Ronin while we're driving, just in case we need to make subtle changes. This is going to go on the opposite side of the support. So once you have the basics set up here, like we just explained, we're going to start the wiring, which is where we're going to get very detailed, because my setup involves using the Raven Eye, an external recorder, and we're going to be able to control the camera via Raven Eye. So we'll set up that. First, we're gonna plug a USB-C to USB-C in, because that's what my camera is. Starting with the RSS port on the Raven Eye, which is right next to the HDMI, and we're gonna plug the other end into our camera. These are 6-foot cables, and one of them is mini HDMI, the other one is micro HDMI. However, I am using my main camera for vlogging and my other camera for this example purpose, and this camera does not take the same cables. So normally I would use one that can go from my camera into the backside of my car so that there's nothing hanging out here to get unplugged. But for example purposes, I'm gonna have to use this short cable. So since we're using a setup that involves using an external monitor, normally we would plug the Raven Eye into the camera. But in our case, we're gonna plug the Raven Eye in, and the other side of the cable is gonna go inside the vehicle. And this is because on my monitor, I have an output, which is a necessary thing to have on your monitor if you're gonna do it this way. And you're going to put the other side of the HDMI on the output of your monitor. So the output signal will go to the Raven Eye. And that's going to give us the ability to still do tracking. Now your kit's going to come with 2 really long cables that have a circular end, 6-pin. One of them has a fat end, the other end is a thinner end, or not as wide. You'll be able to tell which ports they go into, but this is a fat end, and that's going to go into this little piece we added to the side here. And then the other end's gonna go inside your car. And then you're gonna take your second cable with the thin or less wide end, and it's gonna go in the back side here where the power to the gimbal is going to go. Now, all of this setup that we're doing here is a pretty basic setup for the base expansion kit, other than what we did with the HDMI. So I'm gonna reiterate what we did with the HDMI here. We plugged from the Raven Eye to the cable going into the car, as well as the cable coming out from your camera is going to go into your car. Now, the cable from your camera is going to go into the input side of the monitor. So that's what we're going to be able to record with, is our monitor. Now, as you'll notice, some of my cables aren't long enough to reach the front of the car, so I had to buy very long HDMI cables with splitters so I could connect these together. They don't really make micro HDMI to HDMI that are 20 feet long. So you're probably gonna have to use a splitter, but as long as you get high quality ones, it'll still work. So this piece here is going to go on top of your battery grip, and then it gets tightened down. This is how you will get power from your battery to your gimbal. You're gonna take the cable that plugs in from the bottom of the gimbal and plug it into the front of this. Now, where you wanna place this is up to you. I usually place it way up in the front near where I'll be, just to make sure what the battery life is and to know what's going on. However, you could just lay it back here and it's not really going to be in the way. This grip, on the other hand, this is going to go up front regardless, because this is what I'm going to be able to control the gimbal with the little joystick. So plug the skinny end of the other cable that plugs into the side of your gimbal, and it's gonna go right in the front here. As you can see here, this is my controller handle, and it's going to go right in my cup holder so that I can casually reach down and touch the joystick as I'm driving, and I don't even have to look down or pay attention to it to have safer driving. Lastly, you're going to take your very long HDMI cables with your splitters. One of them is going to connect to one of your cables you have, and the other one is going to connect to the other cable. The next thing we're gonna wanna do is set up our monitor. I use a Fat Gecko mount. It's gonna go right up here in the left side, and we're going to put our monitor just on the left side where a GPS or something else would go, to have it kind of out of the way of your field of view when you're driving. But we'll set this up, and then we'll connect our 2 HDMI ports to it, and we'll go from there. All right, so now we have our monitor set up here. It's really out of the way of our field of view. We're gonna take our 2 HDMI cables and plug them in. Now on the side here, I have an in and an out. You have to remember this because it's, you know, it won't work if you don't do it right, but you can figure it out. So your input on the side is the top for the Ninja 5, and that's going to come from your camera because that's your input, the video feed. So we're gonna plug that one in up top. Then your output goes to the Raven Eye. And the reason we do it this way is because we're able to record on an external monitor this way, and we can still use the Raven Eye to do active track following. And that's really it. So now that you have it all set up, you can connect your phone to the gimbal, set your camera settings the way you want them, and start doing your active track. If you want to see a video going into depth as to how you can shoot solo, I will be making another video, and I will try to link it for you here. But that's really it for today, guys. I hope you learned something. I hope this helps. If you have any questions, put them in the comment section down below, and I'll see you on the next one.
I'm in it for the glory. I'm in it for the glory.